Part 1 of this video ended with Harold Godwinson, now King of England, refusing to give in to the pressure from Duke William of Normandy. Everybody in England lay in wait for the sign of ships across the English Channel. But then, ships were spotted, but further north, in the Humber River. These ships were not Frenchmen. It was a 300-vessel strong fleet led by Harold Hardrada, the King of Norway. Hardrada had been convinced by the exiled Tostig to invade England. The local earls Morcar and Edwin were defeated by the invaders at Fulford, and York was seized by Hardrada. Godwinson was taken completely by surprise, and he rushed his forces from London to nearby Tadcaster in just 2 weeks, arriving on the 24th of September. The situation seemed bleak for the new King of England, but good news arose when Harold learnt that the Nords had left York and were camped out near Stamford Bridge. The warm weather had relaxed the Vikings, and they had not taken their chainmail with them. Harold seized the opportunity and pounced on his enemy, winning a decisive victory. Tostig and Hardrada were both slain, and only 24 of the original 300 ships escaped. Many sources, such as The Life, a Godwin family saga, lamented the death of Harold's brother Tostig, born from a family feud that ultimately claimed a brother's life. For many, though, such as Harold himself, he had been vindicated as king, and his legitimacy to rule stemmed from his speedy and decisive victory against a great adversary. 3 days later, the Normans finally played their hand and landed in Pevensey. Harold rushed back with mounted units, continuing to mobilise as he travelled south. Many thanes and their men answered his call in the Midlands and in the south. Once Harold reached London, his brother Griff offered to lead the English forces in Harold's stead, so that the king could live to fight another day should the battle be lost. This was a very sound suggestion from Harold's brother, but unsurprisingly, the king refused to send men to die in his name without he himself being present, and he bravely left London to engage William. As is common knowledge, Harold lost. He was struck in the eye with an arrow, and was then charged by Norman knights, becoming so mutilated that his wife had to identify his body after the battle. Harold died in a way very fitting to his character. His final moments were filled with virility and ferocity as he defended his throne and country. Harold has certainly lived up to the name of his father and to all of the kings that preceded him. He faced down 2 terrifying opponents in quick succession, gloriously defeating the first and heroically falling to the second. It is impossible to say whether history would have been even more favourable to the English had it been William dead instead of Harold, but either way, Harold proved his mettle as a commander in battle, and his rapid marches are testament to his logistical competence. It is not a bold statement to say that the subsequent handful of kings that succeeded William I were certainly not English. They were Norman and French in ethnicity, allegiance, and culture. They brought with them new systems of succession, administration, and would entrench English foreign affairs to the continent for hundreds of years. The later King John, his son Henry, and certainly Edward Longshanks are considered to be turning points in this. English holdings on the continent had become basically non-existent, and the royals were becoming increasingly assimilated into England. The important distinction between Harold and these later monarchs was not necessarily ethnicity. Harold himself was ethnically half Danish. He He put England at the forefront of all, but so did Edward Longshanks, and even John could be said to be a far cry from Richard's later Angevin primacy. What puts Harold as the last English king was that he assumed and exercised power through English rather than the later Norman systems. He was officially appointed by Witton election and spent his time as an earl helping to administer England and defend her from outside threats. He continued to do this till his last breath. Moreover, unlike his successors, his secondary heritage, for Harold's case it was Danish, it bore no bearing on his loyalties or actions as the king's enforcer or as king himself. Harold may not have been the last English king in terms of ethnicity, but he was the last king to have ruled and risen through English systems, and he died fighting to prevent what replaced them.